From ghoulies and
From
ghosties.
ghoulies and ghosties.
And long-leggedy beasties.
And
long-leggedy
beasties.
And
things that go bump in the night. Good Lord! Deliver us.
Deliver us.
Hello there, spooks and spookettes. CountDrahoon here to take a break from my hustle and bustle from moving to give you this very special edition of Interviewed by a Vampire. Your Count does everything that he can to promote independent cinema. Well, not to mention independent horror. This evening I have a very special guest who is on the forefront of promoting independent filmmaking. He is Bryan Louzil. He is the Vice President of Business Development for a new free streaming service that has a wide selection of horror films and really good independent films in general. Please give it up for my friend Bryan Louzil. Bryan, welcome to Interviewed by a Vampire.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, Ryan, right off the bat, why Mometu? What makes Mometu different from all of the other streaming services?
Well, it's a great question. When we started Mometu, we were actually looking at what was not happening, right? So there's a lot of streaming apps out there, and for us, the biggest thing that was lacking was representation of the underserved filmmakers and the underserved content. So when we created Mometu, it was actually centered around bringing light to independent filmmakers, international films that typically don't get a lot of love, and also classics that are typically underserved to most people and sometimes forgotten about. So that's why we created Mometu. And then the difference of what sets us apart is that we actually do everything by hand. We do all of our curation for our content by hand, so that the app looks the same for every single person that visits our platform. So it's not really building like a profile for you or building something based off an algorithm. Because typically when you get those, with some of the bigger streaming platforms that are out there that use algorithms, you typically only see about 3 to 5% of the content, if you're lucky, of what they offer. And so we actually showcase a lot of content that you never knew you loved, never knew existed. And actually, like for yourself, Count, if you are a horror fan, for instance, it's very easy for you to find horror. You can go to, right above my shoulder there, you can go into our genre categories, you can click on horror, and you're right in the mix there. But for someone that is maybe unfamiliar with, say, other over here, let's say here, this Policeman's Lineage is a Korean drama. We get to expose people to content like that they never knew existed. So we'd love to represent a lot of content that you typically would not be served on other platforms.
So, what's in a name? Where does the name Mometu comes from? Where does the name Mometu come from?
Yeah, no, you can say it however you want to. We're okay with if you mispronounce the name, it's okay as long as you watch it, right?
Which I do.
We've heard them all, but so Mometu or however you want to say it, it stands for More for Me and You, and the name behind that, or the meaning behind it, is actually it's more opportunities for filmmakers to be seen, to have their content be showcased, to bring light to the content, again, that's underserved. The me is us literally sitting in the couch with you to hand curate the content and showcase content that you never typically would have been served. And the two being you in Latin is you, the viewer, getting a chance to see content and be a part of the process of being exposed to, again, content that you more than likely never knew you loved.
I want to know a little bit more about you as well, Bryan. How did you sort of fall in with the Mometu folks? Because if memory serves me correctly, because your count does his homework, you have a little bit of a background in the entertainment industry as well. So I want to hear a little bit more about that.
I do. And yeah, great job doing your homework. Uh, yeah, so I actually grew up in the film industry. I was my father was a director, producer. He directed a lot of low budget indie films. He actually directed some films for Troma. His most successful one, or most well known because it actually hit the theaters, was The Class of Nukem High Part 2,
Mhm.
which I believe is also Class of Nukem High Part 2, The Good, the Bad, and the Subhumanoid. Um, so but yeah, so he directed two of those, so parts two and part three, or maybe The Good, the Bad, and the Subhumanoid is the third one. But he did that one, Fortress of America. He directed a bunch of other films. I believe he's definitely over 10 films in his catalog. I don't know the exact number. But he also produced some films too. So he produced actually Kevin Costner's first film, which I believe was originally titled Malibu Hot Summer. Um, but that's where actually my mother and him worked on that and produced that together. And so, yeah, I grew up on film sets. You know, typical childhood where most people have like a summer break and they go to like maybe summer daycares or camps, or winter breaks. They're spending time with their family. I spent those times on film sets and got to go to different places all across the country to watch films be made. And it actually was something I didn't want to be in. I did not want to be in the entertainment industry because of how much my father was gone, because he was always on film sets and out and about, right? So it's actually something when I grew up, I grew up playing soccer. I actually got quite good at it, played college soccer, semi-pro, uh, was very close to getting to the next level, just had a couple injuries that didn't, play out well for me and stop my playing career. But I ended up going into kind of the corporate world. I was in the corporate world for about 15 years, and everything about what I wanted to do in the future was always centered around people. So my focus was always, how can I make people around me better? How can I make people's lives better? And I was about 5 years away from my, quote unquote plan, right? Everyone kind of sets a maybe a roadmap for your life, and about 5 years earlier than my plan of wanting to maybe help start up a startup and help run a startup business that impacted people, got kind of tapped on the shoulder about Mometu, and the rest is kind of history. The opportunity to impact filmmakers such as those that were like my father, right? Independent filmmakers, with nowadays with streaming, there is a barrier to entry that used to be a quite difficult to achieve, and now that barrier to entry is quite easy. In the sense of just making a film, because of the technology is so much more accessible nowadays, and then with streaming it makes it easier for people to see your film, or not easy but easier than it had been in the past. So I looked at it as an opportunity not just to impact filmmakers but also children that were just like me, that were kids of filmmakers. So yeah, I jumped right in, and gosh, it's almost been, I think, almost 3 years now that I've been kind of doing this. So and we've been out into the public for Mometu for about 10 months. So really excited to have had this curveball thrown my way, right? This is something I never thought I would get back into the entertainment world, but I'm very happy that I have been able to get back into this and meet a lot of the filmmakers that I've met so far, and I'm really looking forward to how we can impact more moving forward.
So, breaking down the barriers for indie filmmakers and also breaking down the barriers for viewers to be exposed to more content. And with that in mind, how do we sign up for Mometu and where is it available?
So you actually don't even need to sign up to use Mometu. You can literally just if you want to know from the very, very far back, how can you see Mometu? Just go to mometu.com. So that's Mometu.com. And you will actually find all the platforms that we're available on. If you search that from your phone, for our listeners listening in or watching this, if you search on your phone, it'll actually direct you to the App Store to where you can download it on your phone. But for the best viewing experience, you want to download it on your television. So uh, our more prominent ones are going to be obviously the devices such as Roku, Fire TV, Apple TV, Android TV, and then we're available on smart TVs as well. So Samsung, Vizio, LG, and then through other devices as well that are built in with, such as like the Google Play stores and Roku interfaces built in as well.
And that was a rhetorical question because I know exactly how you get to Mometu because
I know you know. I know you know.
but just in case. but Spooks and Spookettes, just so you know, it's very easy to get in there and get Mometu. I actually have it pulled up on my laptop as we speak. I've been diving into it the last few days. It's a truly incredible service. And speaking of just more talking about the content, I'm curious. Do you know how often new films drop on Mometu? And do you happen to also know roughly how many films are actually on the service currently?
Yeah, so we actually upload content constantly. So you're seeing there's typically new content coming every single month. Some months more than others, but we roughly have just over 10,000 titles. And I say titles because that means movies. It also means shows. Like I mentioned, we have some classic shows that I have on there. So you're gonna find, like Beverly Hillbillies and Bonanza and a lot of stuff that are either some of our listeners, grew up on or parents grew up on. Um, we have some newer shows as well that you probably have never heard of, a lot of indie shows as well. But we have documentaries, and then we also have some live channels as well. And so about 30 channels that you can dive into that are just 24/7 kind of live streaming. They're not technically live TV, right? If you're like watching a live sports event, but it's a linear channel, very similar to broadcast, right? So, but yeah, roughly as far as movies go, we have just over 6,000 as far
Wow.
as just features.
So it's always fascinated me the whole notion of streaming services, and obviously you're the first guest that I've had on my channel that's directly associated with the streaming service. I've always been curious how how does one procure new films? Do people reach out to you directly, or do you also search out titles to put on the streaming service?
Yes.
A bold yes.
Right. So, yeah, no, we do our due diligence in searching out different distribution companies and filmmakers and different content partners that we can work with to bring content onto Momi too. But then we do have people reaching out to us as well.
Now I. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. No, you're fine. I get the opportunity to travel around a little bit, which is great. We're doing this episode. We're in September right now, so I mean, we're I'm going to be going to a conference called MIPCOM soon, which is in France, and I get to go. It's one of the largest content conventions in the world. So there's people represented from countries all over the world that are there, and get to talk to a bunch of different companies about bringing on content. Again, some domestic companies, some are U.S. based, but the great thing is I get to talk to other countries about bringing content, say from We have 13 different cultures and countries represented from Asia alone on Mometu. We have a lot of content from the UK and from Europe. Um, and we typically keep those in the original language and use English subtitles for those. So it's a great opportunity. I get to travel a little bit, um, see the world a little bit, but also get to meet different content partners, which is it's great to meet people that do what we do around the world and just see how they do things differently,
Mhm.
and how they accept content and how they make content differently. Um, most people don't even know that Hollywood is like the center of what people would say is the mecca of filmmaking, right? But at the same time, you have Nollywood, which is in Nigeria. Nollywood actually makes more
Mhm.
content than Hollywood does.
Yes.
And you wouldn't notice that. I mean, the quality isn't as, the budgets they have aren't as high, and they typically do things unscripted. So they're just kind of give them a scene and say, "Hey, go," and you're making your own lines up, which is really fun to watch.
Mhm.
And they're so talented. Um, but yeah, I get to travel around a little bit and kind of bring content from all over the world onto Momi too. But then I also get to work with some filmmakers that are here domestically that reach out, kind of learn about the service. We're still pretty new, 10 months in, being live out to the public. So it's, the word's getting around that we're here to represent the independent filmmaker, and we're getting more and more people reaching out.
I'm glad you brought that up. I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there a way for filmmakers to submit their work to Mometu for consideration? Or do you prefer to sort of keep that under wraps?
No, no, not at all. We're an open book. People can reach out to us at any time. You go to momi2.com, and in there you'll find our support email, or ways that you can reach out to submit content or ask us about it.
Mhm.
Um, we have some requirements, and we go through that with the filmmakers, and if they don't have certain things, we kindly direct them in different, with different partners of ours that could potentially work with them as far as distribution and getting a proper licensing deal. Um, and in that case, we're not just bringing content onto Momi2, we're also helping bring content or their film to other platforms potentially,
Mhm.
because that distribution company has relationships with other places. So depending on the type of film it is and what they're trying to do with it, we can direct them, and we work with, over a dozen different distribution companies. So it's great because some of them have different niches and different relationships. So um, one film, for instance, it was our first exclusive premiere that we did last December, called An Electric Sleep. An Electric Sleep was a sci-fi thriller. Um, it was made for about $13,500 over the course of about 3 years during COVID. And I think they started filming right before COVID, and then they just kind of pieced things together as they could through the process. And that film was eventually put into some film festivals. It won, over 15 awards for Best Director, Best Actor, Best Sci-Fi Movie, right? So, um, it had an initial deal with the distribution company to try to sell it and try to license it out, and for whatever reason, no one was picking it up.
Mhm.
And my wife and I actually went up to Hollywood, and we watched this film at the gosh, it was at the um not Sunset Beach. It was the oh, I always forget the name of the film festival. But either way, there's a film festival that happens in Hollywood,
Mhm.
and Silicon Beach, there it is. And so
Oh.
Silicon Beach Film Festival had one best sci-fi. My wife and I went up and we watched An Electric Sleep. And I had zero aspirations at that point. I was just there to support these filmmakers and say, "Hey guys, if you are looking for a home for your film, we are here for you. We want to support you." And a few months later, they came to us and said, "Hey, it didn't work out with our distribution company. We're hoping that maybe Momi 2 would want to work with us." And I would say, "Absolutely, we're here to support you." So we got that film up, and we did an exclusive premiere for it. 2 months later, it was not only seen by more people than they thought would have seen it, but
Mhm.
they also got their second film greenlit because a producer had seen their film on our platform, had some money set aside and said, "Hey, do you want to make a second film?" So they greenlit their second film, which is in post-production right now, which is phenomenal to have that done within literally a year's time.
Yes.
And that film is on an Electric Sleep can also now be found not just on Mometu, but I believe it can be found on Tubi. It can now be found on Afroland TV, and a few others. So that film is now being seen by people uh, when more than likely that film would have just been put up back on the shelf and never seen again. So
Mhm.
that's kind of part of what we're trying to do is really kind of give a jump start to these independent filmmakers that just need the opportunity.
Well, I'll have to check that one out. The title in and of itself is pretty captivating. I like that.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good story.
So another way that Mometu helps, as you said, kickstart independent filmmakers, you have I hope I'm getting the name correct, the Mometu College Film Fest, and I was hoping maybe you could talk a little bit more about that, because I think that would be a great avenue if there's any college-age filmmakers that are out there that potentially might want to submit their work to the next one next year.
Yeah, so we have the Mometu College Shorts Film Festival, and I'll actually while we're doing this, I'll change my background so that you can see some of the films from that festival. So these are actually some of the winners, the winning films from our first two festivals that we've held. We held the first one back in December, just to kind of get it up and running in 2023, and then we held our second one, which will be our typical time frame, which is going to be at the end of the school year. So we held that in June, and yeah, so the Mometu College Shorts Film Festival is about pretty much what it sounds like for short films from college students.
Mhm.
And this second festival, we had 69 films represented by 38 different colleges and universities across the country, and actually one from Canada. And that was spread across 7 different genre categories. And the films were placed up on the Mometu for an entire month. And then at the end of that month, we had a panel of judges that helped pick the 7 winners, as well as taking some of the metrics that we had from the watch time and the unique users and all that such from Mometu to help kind of judge it as well. And we had the 7 winners were invited to Hollywood. So we screened their films live on Sunset Boulevard, and we had the audience pick an award for the who they thought was the best. We had Vizio was our best picture sponsor, so they were
Mhm.
there to help announce the winner. The winner also got they got a Blackmagic Pocket Pro camera. They got a brand new Vizio Smart TV and soundbar. And one of the coolest things, which I thought was my favorite prize, at least, is the producer's pick. So we partnered with a company called V Channels, which they're now known as Insurgents, and we're working on developing one of those short films into a feature film. And it is going to be directed by that student filmmaker who made that short film. And so we have this festival that is here to just jumpstart these students' careers, get seen by more people. We do some educational panels through the process, but at the end of the day, they get to be seen, they get to be heard, get this really cool experience. And then, like right above me, Spare Me was the winner of the producer's pick, and that is currently in process of being developed.
So it's interesting that you bring that up. It kind of leads me to my next point. Like other streaming services that have sort of branched out into this direction, do you foresee a situation where Mometu may actually expand into creating their own in-house content, more feature films, television shows, podcasts, even?
Yeah, it's definitely on the roadmap for down the line. But for now, we gotta, we keep it on the roadmap and put it there as more of a vision board kind of thing, right? But
Right.
we got to get there first. So as of now, we're just really focused on supporting the independent filmmakers and supporting their current dream. And if it works out, my goal or my kind of objective would be to work with some of these independent filmmakers that kind of got their start on Mometu and hopefully do those quote unquote Mometu originals, right, with those
Yes.
filmmakers. But we're hoping that Spare Me, which is the winner of the
Mhm.
short film festival, that's going to be turned into a feature. That's then going to premiere on Mometu. And to be honest, if it is if it's worthy and is good enough, we may want to deem it as a Mometu original. We'll see.
Perfect. Well, out of curiosity, this is more of a bit of a fun question. Well, I hope all my questions have been sort of fun. But out of there's so many movies on Mometu, and I mean you yourself. I mean you've been inundated with so many kinds of different films since you were born. I wanted to know if you have one, what is your favorite movie of all time? And what's your favorite genre to explore on Mometu?
Oh, wow. That is such a loaded question, Count. That is such a loaded question. And usually when people ask me, because I have been asked that before, but usually when people ask me, I say, well, what genre? Like, because I mean,
That's fair.
so it's so hard, and for anyone that's maybe a sports fan, that's like saying, okay, who's your favorite basketball player? And
Mhm.
it's like for me, it's like, well, what position? Because I don't ever want to compare a point guard and a center, or people always talk about the whole Kobe versus Michael versus LeBron question. And again, these are different generations, these are different
Mhm.
positions and all that stuff, right? So um, I will say that the one genre that continues to bring me back, and it's more of a nostalgia thing for me, is comedies. I'm a big fan of laughing and just enjoying time, right? I mean, um, and having quotable things with friends, right? Like I go back to high school with, Old School and Billy Madison and Happy Gilmore and the Wedding Crashers, like those
Mhm.
classics, or those not classics, but those comedies that are near and dear to my heart, that Forgetting Sarah Marshall, that I just quote with my friends, right? Like I can
Mhm.
go back to my friends from high school or college, and we could sit down after not seeing each other for, who knows how long, and just start quoting material. And it's just, that's how a whole conversation could just be movie quotes, right?
Yes.
Um, but I love classic comedies too. So I get back to like I would say my favorite director filmmaker is Mel Brooks. I love I love Mel Brooks. I love his way of writing. I love his that it's quirky, that it's kind of over the top.
Mhm.
It's very unique storylines, like Robin Hood Men Tights, right? Like, I mean, whoever thought of doing that story the way that he did? Um, some of the stuff that is probably would never be made today because of the
Right.
type of material that was written, right? Um, but and I also love, I mean, Spaceballs is just such a classic, such a good comedy spoof on Star Wars. If you haven't seen it, go see it. There's also some pieces of like Alien in it, right? So
Mhm.
where the guy comes out of the chest.
Not again.
You want the soup or the soup or the special, right? It's like so and that just brings you back to old school diners, and it just cracks me. That stuff cracks me up.
Mhm.
Um but I love like Revenge of the Nerds, if you haven't seen
Mhm.
that.
Of course.
Such a good classic comedy, right? So yeah, there's a lot of comedy that I really, really do enjoy. Um I will say I love war movies. And I wouldn't say typical like World War movies or something like that. I mean, or more of like epics in a sense, right? Like so
Mhm.
Troy, um, Braveheart, The Last Samurai, right? Like movies where there are like battles taking place. Really love those movies and love those storylines. Um, but I will say the more recent film that's probably my go-to, or at least it was my go-to for a while, was Avatar. Again, fantasy, but also like kind of battle going on. There's a little bit of romance. There's just a lot going on. And I could, when that came out, I don't know how many times I watched it, but I really got into it, But again, it just depends on the genre. Like
Right.
there's a lot of great horror films out there, right?
Of course.
Like we have a lot of horror content from all the way back to the 1920s with like Nosferatu,
Mhm.
which may be one of your, maybe it's a great grandfather of yours. I'm not sure. Uh,
There's a striking resemblance to my father, but that's all I'll say.
looking forward to the new Nosferatu coming out in December. Um, but again, I think it just depends on my mood, what I'm into. If I'm watching with my wife, am I watching by myself? Am I watching with my buddies? So yeah, that's such a loaded question.
But that is a perfectly respectable, and that is frankly the right answer, because I feel like if you're gonna answer that question, it's you give a definitive answer like this is my hard and fast favorite movie of all time, and here's a 90-page diatribe of why it's my favorite movie, or ooh, it's really hard to narrow down. How about a top 5, or I'll give you my favorite in each genre. You have to be wary of people that will give you an answer of a movie that came out within like the last 2 years as their favorite movie.
I'll throw one out there. And this is probably why I really fell in love with like the epics and the battle, um, and somewhat fantasy type, movies. Um, but Willow.
Yeah, Willow's a good one.
Willow is a great. I mean, but growing up, God, I don't know how old I was when it came out, but
Mhm.
or even if I was born when it came out. But I just remember watching it as a kid, and um, yeah, just good movies like that. I really do enjoy, and it doesn't have to be a specific genre or specific niche or meta genre. It's depends on the mood and who I'm with and what I'm kind of getting into. But I've seen so many films that it's so hard. I tip my cap to someone that can just say, "Hey, this is my favorite movie of all time," and I just like good for you being able to narrow it down. I love films so much. So
Well, like I said, Brian, I think you have more than proven yourself as a true cinephile. So I really enjoyed listening to you answer that question, because it gives me a good sense of where you at, who you are, and I feel like I'm in very good company. I've enjoyed our time together. We're wrapping up here a little bit, but before I ask this last question, I just want to thank you again for your time, and thank you for for being a part of Mometu, and sharing with my audience all the things that you're doing, because your count is having lived in Hollywood for a couple of years. I think it's more important now than ever to really be an advocate for independent film. Of course, being a vampire, I'm sort of pigeonholed in independent horror, but all the same, it's important for folks to be exposed to as many different kinds of art forms as possible. And nowadays, art is so accessible, probably more accessible than it's ever been. And so it's always good to have someone like yourself who's on the forefront of getting those voices out there, as it were.
I appreciate that, Count. No, thank you. And it's a lot of work and it's a lot of time and dedication to make this happen. And I really hope that people see the value in what we're doing and do support us. And we may not need to be someone's first choice app. It's okay,
Mhm.
right? But when you get to that point, which is typically almost inevitable nowadays, unless you just have every subscription service known to man, uh, people will run into a point of saying, "Hey, I've seen everything. There's nothing new," and it's really just what the algorithm of the current app that you're using will eventually get to a point of not serving you new stuff, and then you got to really spend some time to look for new content and to rebuild your algorithm or change it up a bit, right? we're here to just be that the option for you, and have that the chance to expose you to content again that you never knew you loved, never knew existed, and again to support independent filmmakers that typically are not being seen as much on other platforms.
So, as our newest option, tell us what can we expect from Mometu in the future, and how can we stay tuned in?
Yeah, I mean, well, by staying tuned in, I mean, definitely go to mometu.com, sign up for our newsletter. We're sending out different updates and things happening there. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is at Free Mometu, so FREE, because we're always free. We're never going to change that. We're not going to add a subscription version to get rid of ads or anything like that. We're going to keep it free. Keeps us as accessible as possible to everyone. So Free Mometu. And so subscribe to our YouTube channel. You're going to find some stuff on there like our movie of the weeks, which again, we're going to be highlighting different genres and different things that we bring onto the platform, and maybe even some new releases that we eventually get to on there. Like we just did with a movie called Stupid Games. If you haven't seen that one, definitely put that on your radar account. It's a horror film that was made for just under $10,000, and it looks nowhere near a $10,000 movie. Great film. And we did a movie of the week on that. We just started a new series that we're doing with a gentleman from TikTok. His name is Lobby Intros, and or his real name is Harry Marks. But Harry is bringing back the nostalgic intros of the old time TCM intros to classic films such as Sabrina and The Hitchhiker, or a couple that he just did recently. So you'll see that series on our YouTube channel as well. And under the same name of at Free Mometu, you can follow us across the board on all social media platforms: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, X, whatever your flavor is, we got it for you. As far as what's coming up, a little bit of kind of the same in the near future of what we're doing. Just adding some new titles here and there. Again, trying to support up and coming filmmakers as best we can. I can't share all the details about it right now, but we have something in the works as far as a film contest coming up for indie filmmakers and their short films. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully we'll have that buttoned up by the end of this month, and we'll be able to announce it. And then yeah, I mean, that film Spare Me, which is not going to be the title of the feature, but again, working with those college students and launching the next college shorts film festival on Mometu next spring, and hopefully impacting another film student's career by having their film turned into a feature once again, and hopefully having that a reoccurring yearly opportunity to support a filmmaker and have their film be, their first feature ever made be premiered on Mometu. So yeah, a lot of fun and upcoming things. If you are listening from outside of North America, I do apologize. Mometu is not available for you unless you get really creative and find a way to stream our service outside. But we are available to everyone here in North America and the US, our friends up north in Canada, and our friends down south in Mexico.
That's partly why I got out of Eastern Europe, so that I could enjoy Mometu. But anyway, thanks again, Bryan, for your time. And thank you, Spooks and Spookettes. I will have all the information for Bryan and for Mometu so that you can register today to watch all the great content on Mometu and to follow them on social media so that you can stay tuned to what they have coming up next. So until next time, Spooks and Spookettes, thank you for watching, and always remember that as far as things go, when things go bump in the night, there are such things.
From ghoulies and ghosties.
From ghoulies and ghosties.
And long-leggedy beasties.
And long-legged beasties.
And things that go bump in the night. Good Lord! Deliver us!